The sky above the war-torn planet burned a dull, coppery red, the light filtering through the thick clouds of smoke that hung low over the barren landscape. Broken towers and twisted metal structures littered the horizon, like the skeletal remains of a civilization that had long been forgotten. Every step across the jagged ground sent up clouds of ash and dust, and the wind carried the faint, metallic scent of burnt machinery. Captain Elias Vance squinted against the smoke and adjusted the straps of his armor. He was tall, lean, and battle-hardened, with eyes that had seen far too much death and destruction. But even after years of fighting, he had never grown accustomed to scenes like this. War had a way of leaving scars not just on the land, but on the soul. Beside him, strapped into a reinforced transport cage, was the prisoner he had come to save. Lyra, the alien princess, sat with a quiet dignity, her luminous eyes reflecting the flickering light of distant fires. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, and her hair shimmered like strands of silver silk. Though she appeared delicate, there was a steel in her posture, a sense of control and intelligence that warned against underestimating her. Elias had tracked her for months through enemy territory, crossing systems few humans dared to enter. The warlord who held her captive was ruthless, known for torturing prisoners to extract information. Yet through clever planning, careful timing, and no small amount of luck, Elias had managed to slip past the warlord's defenses and bring Lyra to safety. The last exchange had been tense. The princess had been surrounded by guards in a high-security compound on the edge of a scorched desert. They had fought their way through corridors of fire and smoke, dodging plasma bolts and collapsing walkways. When they finally reached the transport ship, Lyra had stepped into the cage without hesitation, a small nod of trust directed at Elias. Now, after hours of careful flight, they had landed on the barren plains far from the warlord's reach. Elias approached the transport cage, his hand resting on the payment case he carried, a small box filled with credits, enough to settle the debt he owed for her freedom. He opened the case and placed it on the ground. Lyra looked at it for a moment, then at him. The words she spoke made Elias pause, a chill running down his spine. "You paid for my freedom. Now take me too." Elias blinked, uncertain whether he had heard her correctly. "Take you? What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. Lyra's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "The warlord's reach is long. Even now his forces are hunting us. I cannot survive alone. If you have brought me this far, I ask you to take me with you. Not as a burden, but as a partner. My life is yours as much as my freedom." Elias hesitated. He was a man who trusted his instincts, and his instincts told him that taking her with him could complicate everything. He had his own mission to complete, his own survival to worry about. But as he looked at her, at the intelligence in her gaze, the determination in her stance, he realized she was no ordinary princess. She was a being who could contribute to the fight, someone who could stand beside him. "All right," he said finally. "You're coming with me. But you follow my lead and we survive together." Lyra nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. Agreed. Together, they moved away from the transport ship, keeping low to avoid being spotted. The barren plain stretched endlessly before them, jagged rocks and cracked earth forming a natural maze. Elias scanned the horizon with a small binocular device, noting the faint glints of patrol drones that hovered in the distance. The journey would not be easy. The warlord's forces were relentless, and the terrain offered little in the way of cover. Yet as they traveled, Elias began to notice something remarkable. Lyra moved with grace and precision, her steps calculated and confident. She pointed out hidden paths through the rocks, places where the ground was stable enough to cross without risking injury. She knew the land even if she was not of this planet, and her guidance proved invaluable. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the plain, they came upon the first real obstacle, a ravine that split the ground like a jagged scar. The only way across was a narrow, crumbling bridge of metal and stone. Elias tested the structure carefully. It groaned under his weight but seemed stable enough for a careful crossing. "Go first," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. He shook his head. "No, you go. I'll follow." "I am not a child," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "I will cross with caution. But if we are to survive, we must trust each other." Elias nodded. There was a lesson in those words, one he had learned many times over in his life. Survival depended not just on skill, but on trust. He stepped aside, allowing her to move forward first. Lyra's movements were precise. Her body seemed to float over the unstable bridge, her eyes scanning every plank and loose stone. Elias followed cautiously, each step a careful negotiation with gravity and the fragile structure beneath him. When they reached the other side safely, they allowed themselves a brief moment of relief. Night fell quickly on the barren planet, and with it came the cold. Elias and Lyra found a shallow cave among the rocks, just enough to shield them from the icy wind. They built a small fire using what little fuel they had, and the flames cast flickering shadows across their faces. "You have survived much to get here," Elias said, breaking the silence. "Why did you not escape before?" Lyra's expression darkened. The warlord's prison was unlike any other. It was not just walls and guards, it was a network of traps and surveillance. Even if I had tried, I would have been caught and my people would have suffered for my failure. You have given me something few have, a chance to choose my own path. Elias nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had fought countless battles for money, for survival, for glory, but rarely for something that mattered beyond himself. Here, in this barren world, he realized the stakes were different. The survival of a life could mean the survival of a civilization. The night was long, and the wind whispered through the rocks like a distant warning. Yet for the first time in a long while, Elias felt a glimmer of hope. Together, he and Lyra had crossed impossible odds. Together, they might survive the dangers ahead. As he drifted into a light, uneasy sleep beside the fire, Elias made a silent promise. No matter what lay ahead, he would protect the princess. Not for payment, not for glory, but because he understood something fundamental. Human courage was strongest when it fought for something worth protecting. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the smoke and ruins, the warlord's patrols moved, unaware that his prize had slipped from his grasp. Yet Elias knew this was only the beginning. The barren war zone would test them in ways neither could imagine, and only together could they hope to see another sunrise. The first part of their journey had ended, but the story of survival, courage, and unexpected alliances had only just begun. The next morning, the sun barely pierced the thick haze that clung to the barren plains. Elias rubbed his eyes and shook off the remnants of sleep, the cold wind biting at his face. Beside him, Lyra was already awake, her silver hair glinting faintly in the dim light. She scanned the horizon with sharp, calculating eyes as though she could see threats before they appeared. "The patrols are still out there," she said quietly. "We need to move before they detect us." Elias nodded. "Agreed, let's keep low and avoid open areas. The landscape here favors those who hide and wait." They set off in silence, stepping carefully over rocks and cracked ground. The barren world stretched endlessly, broken by jagged cliffs and twisted remnants of cities. The occasional skeletal remains of machinery hinted at a once thriving civilization, now reduced to ash and ruin. Elias could not help but feel the weight of history pressing down on him, yet he pushed it aside. Survival came first. Hours passed, and the two travelers relied on a combination of human skill and alien knowledge. Lyra's familiarity with ancient technology and hidden paths proved invaluable. She led Elias along narrow ledges and through rocky corridors that the patrol drones could not easily reach. Every so often, she pointed out weak spots in the terrain, unstable rocks, hidden tunnels, and underground caverns that offered safe refuge. "You see this?" she said, crouching near a fissure in the ground. "These tunnels were carved centuries ago. They are forgotten by most, but they will shield us from the enemy." Elias peered into the darkness. The tunnels were narrow and winding, the walls covered in strange markings that glowed faintly under Lyra's touch. "Looks like luck favors us," he muttered. "Or maybe skill." "Both," she replied, her voice steady. "Luck is nothing without the courage to act." The tunnels led them deeper into the desolate terrain. The air grew cooler and more stagnant, but the passage offered cover from the prying eyes of the warlord's scouts. Every so often, distant sounds of combat echoed through the canyon walls, a reminder that the warlord's forces were always near. As they walked, Elias began to notice something remarkable. Despite her royal upbringing, Lyra was no fragile princess. She climbed with agility, assessed risks with precision, and made decisions quickly. When a section of the tunnel collapsed, she did not panic. Instead, she analyzed the debris, calculated a safe path and led them both through without hesitation. Elias had faced countless dangers in his life, but he realized that in Lyra he had found an ally who could match his skill and determination. The first real test came near midday. A narrow canyon opened before them, and the sound of humming engines filled the air. Elias froze. "Drones," he whispered. "And more than a few soldiers." Lyra examined the situation quickly. "We cannot fight them openly. But there is another way. Follow me." She led him along a hidden ledge above the canyon floor, where rocks provided a natural shield. From this vantage point, they observed the patrols. Mechanical drones scanned the terrain with sharp, rotating sensors, while armored soldiers marched in formation, weapons at the ready. The patrols moved methodically, searching for any sign of intruders. Elias tapped his chin. "We need a distraction," Lyra nodded. "I can use their tech against them." She reached into a small pouch and retrieved a device shaped like a flat disc. "This will emit a signal to confuse their sensors for a short time, enough to let us slip past." With a flick of her hand, the device activated. The drones hesitated, their lights flickering and shifting erratically. The soldiers glanced around, confused by the sudden disruption. Elias seized the moment. "Move!" he shouted, and they dashed along the ledge, staying low and moving as silently as possible. The patrols soon regained their composure, but by then Elias and Lyra had reached the far side of the canyon. They paused, catching their breath. "Human ingenuity combined with alien technology," Lyra said with a smile. "It seems we make a good team." Elias allowed himself a brief grin. "Don't let it get to your head. We still have a long way to go." By late afternoon, they reached the remains of an ancient city. Crumbled buildings and shattered streets stretched as far as the eye could see. Elias surveyed the area carefully. "This place may have been abandoned for centuries, but it can provide cover. We can rest here and find supplies." They moved cautiously through the ruins, finding remnants of old shelters, water containers, and even weapons caches hidden beneath collapsed walls. Lyra's knowledge proved crucial again, as she deciphered symbols and markings that pointed to hidden resources. With careful scavenging, they gathered enough food and water to sustain them for several days, as well as a few old weapons and tools. As they prepared to settle in for the night, Lyra turned to Elias. "Your people are resourceful," she said. "Even in a place like this, you find ways to survive." "It is admirable." Elias shook his head. "It's what humans do. We adapt, we survive. That's why we've lasted this long despite everything." Lyra's eyes glimmered. "And yet you also fight for others even when it is not required." "That is something rare, something I respect." The night was cold and filled with distant, unsettling sounds. Strange creatures prowled the ruins, their cries echoing through the empty streets. Elias kept watch while Lyra slept, his hand resting on a weapon just in case. Despite the dangers, he felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. Protecting her was more than a mission. It was a reason to fight, a chance to do something meaningful in a universe that often seemed indifferent to life. When morning came, they continued their journey. The terrain grew rougher, the rocks sharper, and the air thinner. They faced sudden storms that blew sand and debris across their path, forcing them to seek shelter in crevices and caves. Each challenge tested their endurance and teamwork, and each time they overcame it, their bond grew stronger. During one particularly dangerous crossing, they came upon a ravine filled with swirling dust storms. A single narrow bridge of metal stretched across the chasm, rusted and unstable. Elias studied it carefully. "One wrong step and we fall," he said. Lyra examined it too. "I can stabilize part of it with my tools. But we must move quickly and carefully." Together they worked to reinforce the bridge using a combination of human strength and Lyra's alien technology. Step by step they crossed, the wind howling around them. Halfway across, a gust nearly knocked Elias off balance, but Lyra's quick reflexes saved him. When they finally reached solid ground, they allowed themselves a moment to breathe, both knowing that every step forward was a victory. As they continued, Elias realized that this journey was changing him. The war-torn planet was brutal and unforgiving, but it revealed the best of human nature, ingenuity, courage, and determination. And beside him, Lyra was no longer just a passenger. She was a partner, someone whose skills, knowledge, and courage matched his own. By evening, they reached a hidden canyon that Lyra called a sanctuary. Here, Water pooled in small natural basins and the rocks provided shelter from the wind. They set up a temporary camp and shared a quiet meal, their conversation turning to the future. "The warlord will not give up easily," Lyra said. "He will send more forces. We must be ready." Elias nodded. "We will be. We've survived this long, haven't we? And we'll survive what comes next together." Lyra smiled faintly. Together. As night fell, Elias kept watch once again. The stars above the barren plains shone dimly through the smoke and haze. He could feel the weight of what lay ahead, the dangers they would face and the battles that still awaited them. Yet for the first time in a long while he felt hope. Hope that humans, even in the darkest corners of the universe, could make a difference. Hope that courage, ingenuity, and trust could overcome the greatest odds. And as he looked at Lyra sleeping quietly beside the fire, he realized something he had long forgotten. Survival was not enough. To truly endure, one needed purpose, one needed allies, and one needed to fight for something greater than oneself. The barren war zone stretched on endlessly, but Elias knew they could face it. Step by step, challenge by challenge, human courage and alien knowledge would carry them forward. And in that desolate place, among the ruins and dangers, a bond was forming that would define the battles to come. For now, they had survived. And survival, Elias knew, was only the beginning. The sun rose slowly over the jagged horizon, casting long shadows across the barren plains. The air was thin, dry, and carried the scent of scorched earth. Elias Vance awoke first, as usual, his sharp eyes scanning the rocky landscape. Beside him, Lyra stirred, blinking in the weak morning light. "Another day," Elias said quietly. "We need to keep moving before the warlord's patrols find us." Lyra stretched, her silver hair catching the light. "Yes, but there is something I must tell you," she said. Her voice was calm, yet carried a weight that made Elias sit up straighter. "You know more than you've told me," Elias replied, his tone cautious. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "My people, my planet, it is in danger. The warlord is not just after me. He is systematically destroying my world, seizing resources, enslaving my people. I have knowledge that could stop him, but I cannot act alone." Elias felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had faced many dangers, but this was different. The survival of an entire civilization rested in their hands. "Then we fight," he said firmly. "Not just to survive, but to protect them. We won't let this warlord win." Lyra's eyes glimmered with hope. "You speak like humans often do, courage without hesitation. But courage alone is not enough.
We need strategy, and we need allies." Their journey continued across the rough, unforgiving landscape.
The two traveled lightly, moving through narrow canyons and rocky corridors, always alert. Every so often, the distant hum of patrol drones reminded them of the warlord's relentless pursuit. Elias knew that one mistake could mean capture or death. By midday, they encountered their first real obstacle, a large open valley with patrolling drones and foot soldiers moving in formation. There was no way around. Elias crouched behind a boulder, analyzing the enemy positions. "We can't fight them head-on," he whispered. "Too many, too fast. We need a plan." Lyra knelt beside him, her fingers tracing patterns on the ground. "There is an ancient outpost nearby. It is abandoned, but it has old defense systems. I can activate them. They will buy us time." Elias nodded. "Then let's move carefully. One misstep and we're done for." They made their way through the rocky terrain, avoiding the patrols, their movements precise and silent. When they reached the outpost, Elias marveled at the design. It was old but sophisticated, with walls that still held power in the dormant defense systems. Lyra approached a console, her fingers glowing faintly as she interfaced with the alien technology. The screens flickered to life and the outpost's automated turrets activated. The valley erupted in confusion as the enemy patrols were forced to retreat from the unexpected defense. Elias grinned. Human ingenuity, alien technology, and a bit of luck. "Not bad," Lyra smiled. "We make a good team." But there was little time to celebrate. The warlord's forces would regroup, and soon they would retaliate. They had to move forward before reinforcements arrived. As they continued, the bond between the two grew stronger. Trust was no longer tentative, it was real. They shared stories of past battles, survival, and dreams for a better future. By late afternoon, they encountered a river of molten rock, a deadly barrier that cut through the valley. There was no bridge, no easy crossing. Elias studied the terrain. We'll have to build a path across carefully. One wrong step and we fall into the lava. Lyra examined the area. We can use the metal fragments over there. Combined with some of your human tools, we can create a stable walkway. It will take time, but it is possible. They worked together, placing the metal carefully, reinforcing weak sections with rocks and tools. Sweat poured from their faces and the heat of the lava pressed down on them like a living weight. But human determination is hard to stop. Step by step, they created a safe path. When they finally crossed, Elias looked back at the molten river and nodded. Nothing can stop humans and their allies when they put their minds to it. That night, as they rested in a small cavern, Elias thought about the journey so far. Lyra, he said, why me? Why trust a human with your life? She looked at him, her violet eyes thoughtful. Because humans have something unique. You adapt, you survive, and you fight for more than just yourselves. You have heart, courage, and sometimes that is stronger than any weapon. Elias felt a surge of pride. He had always known humans could survive against the odds, but hearing it from an alien princess, someone whose civilization depended on their courage, gave the words weight. Then we fight together, he said. Not just for survival, but for your people, your planet, and the future. Morning brought a new challenge. As they climbed a ridge, they were ambushed by a squadron of mechanized drones and alien soldiers. The patrols were faster and more numerous than before. Elias and Lyra ducked behind a ridge, quickly assessing the situation. We can't outrun them, Elias muttered. We'll have to outsmart them. Lyra pointed to a series of rock formations. There, use the terrain. I can lure some drones into the canyon. They will get trapped temporarily. Elias smiled faintly. Human strategy and alien guidance. Let's do it. The battle was intense. Lyra used her knowledge of the drone's sensors to create temporary blind spots, while Elias set traps and used the rocks for cover. They moved in tandem, anticipating each other's actions, their teamwork flawless. One by one, the drones fell into makeshift traps, their circuits fried by carefully placed charges. The alien soldiers, confused and frustrated, were forced to retreat. When the dust settled, Elias and Lyra stood among the scorched ground, breathing heavily. We survived, Elias said, wiping soot from his face. Lyra nodded. Not just survived, we fought. And we learned something important. Even when outnumbered, courage and strategy can turn the tide. The day ended with them resting on a rocky plateau, overlooking the valley below. The ruins and fires of battle stretched as far as the eye could see, but amidst the destruction, Elias saw something remarkable: signs of life, small pockets of hope, and reminders that survival was always possible. Lyra looked at him. Your people, humans, you inspire hope. Even in places like this, you show that life can endure. That courage can change the outcome of war. Elias shook his head. It's not just humans. We're just lucky enough to fight alongside those who teach us new ways to survive. You've shown me that too, Lyra. For the first time in many months, Elias allowed himself a sense of optimism. They had faced danger, navigated treacherous terrain, and outwitted their enemies. They had done more than survive. They had demonstrated the heart of humanity in a universe that often seemed cruel and uncaring. But deep down, Elias knew the warlord would not stop. The final battles were yet to come, and the true test of human courage and ingenuity had not yet begun. As night fell over the barren plains, Elias and Lyra prepared for rest, their minds alert for any sign of danger. The stars above twinkled faintly through the smoke and haze, a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope could still shine. And as they slept side by side, the bond between human and alien grew stronger, forged in the fires of adversity, trust, and shared determination. Together they had faced impossible odds, and together they would face whatever came next. Because in the heart of humanity lies something the universe cannot destroy: courage, resilience, and the will to protect what matters most. The barren plains stretched endlessly, jagged and lifeless under the pale light of the twin suns. Elias and Lyra moved cautiously, their steps measured, their eyes constantly scanning for danger. Though the battles behind them had tested their courage and skill, the true trial was far from over. Somewhere out there, the warlord's forces were regrouping, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lyra led Elias toward what she claimed was a safe haven, a hidden settlement carved into the cliffs long ago. now overgrown and abandoned to all but the most careful explorers. Elias was skeptical. If this place is real, it could save us. But I won't let us walk blindly into another trap, he said, his hand resting on the hilt of his weapon. Lyra nodded. I understand. But I've studied this place my entire life. Its defenses, its hidden paths. It is the only chance we have to regroup. They moved silently through the rocky terrain, the only sounds their footsteps and the whisper of the wind. As they approached the hidden settlement, Elias noticed faint signs of life. Small fires, footprints, and smoke curling from chimneys. We're not alone, he said quietly. Lyra's eyes narrowed. This is unexpected? Cautiously, they entered the settlement, and what they saw chilled them both. The people here were armed, organized, and clearly expecting them. But more shocking was the banner above the entrance, the insignia of the warlord. Elias felt a surge of anger. They're working for him. A trap, he whispered. Lyra's face was grim. Not all of them. Some may still be loyal to me, but we must be careful. They have divided loyalties, and we cannot trust appearances. Elias nodded, already planning their approach. Then we proceed carefully. Watch my back and I'll watch yours. They stepped into the settlement, pretending to be travelers seeking shelter. The villagers eyed them warily, whispering among themselves. A leader emerged, a tall, imposing figure with armor that reflected the fading sunlight. Who are you? He demanded. Elias straightened, his voice steady. Travelers, no threat. We only seek safety. The leader studied them for a moment, then gestured for them to follow. As they walked, Lyra whispered to Elias, we need to find the central chamber. There is information there that could help us turn this situation to our advantage. The central chamber was an ancient command hall, with consoles and screens partially functional, long since abandoned by their original builders. Lyra's fingers traced the markings and symbols, and the screens flickered to life, revealing a network of maps, communications, and defense systems. This, she said, her voice full of awe, is more than a hideout. It is a hidden base, and it has technology that could give us the upper hand against the warlord's forces. Elias felt a spark of hope. Then we use it. What do we need to do? Lyra began working on the alien technology, deciphering the codes, activating old systems, and mapping out enemy positions. Her knowledge of her civilization's technology was unmatched, but it required human skill and intuition to integrate with the base's systems. Elias assisted, using his experience with tactical planning, engineering, and combat strategy. Together, they began to form a plan, a way to turn the enemy's divided loyalties and old defenses against the warlord. But danger was not far behind. From the shadows, a group of armed soldiers emerged, led by one of the settlement's supposed allies. Step away from the controls, the leader commanded, his voice hard and cold. You have no right here. Elias reacted immediately, pushing Lyra behind him. Looks like we've been discovered, he muttered. Time to improvise. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. We can do this. Trust the plan. Using the base's partially activated defense systems, they created distractions. Automated turrets sprang to life and hidden traps triggered, forcing the enemy soldiers to scatter. Elias used his human ingenuity to set further improvised traps, guiding the attackers into areas where the defenses could neutralize them. Lyra worked the technology, rerouting energy flows to maximize the base's defensive potential. The skirmish was intense. Every step required split-second decisions, precise timing, and trust between the two. By the time the last soldier was incapacitated or fled, the chamber was silent except for the hum of the ancient technology. Elias took a deep breath. That was too close, he said. We're lucky we survived. Lyra shook her head. We are not lucky. We are prepared and we are skilled, but there is more to do. Look at these maps. She pointed to a holographic display, showing the warlord's forces arrayed across the plains and valleys. There is a weapon hidden here, she said, tracing a path to a distant facility. If we can activate it, we can disable a large portion of his army. But it is dangerous. We will need to combine our abilities, human strategy and alien technology, to succeed. Elias studied the maps, calculating the risks. It's risky, but it's the only chance we have to gain an advantage. We do it. As they prepared to leave, Lyra paused. There is something else you need to know. Not everyone here is loyal. Some are spies for the warlord waiting for the right moment. We must act carefully and quickly. Elias nodded. We'll watch each other's backs. That's all we can do. They moved swiftly, navigating hidden passages and avoiding patrols. Every step brought them closer to the distant facility, but also deeper into danger. The barren landscape offered little protection, and the enemy knew the terrain well. When they finally reached the facility, it appeared abandoned at first glance. Tall towers of steel and glass, dark corridors, and silent machinery. But Lyra's eyes caught faint signs of movement. "We are not alone," she whispered. Suddenly, the enemy revealed themselves. A squadron of soldiers, led by the warlord's trusted commander. "You should have stayed away," the commander sneered. Elias and Lyra exchanged a glance. "Time to improvise," Elias muttered. They fought with precision and determination. Elias used the terrain to his advantage, setting traps, forcing the soldiers into choke points and using clever diversions. Lyra activated the ancient technology within the facility, creating energy barriers, automated defenses, and strategic disruptions that gave them the edge. The battle was fierce, but human ingenuity and courage, combined with Lyra's alien knowledge, proved unstoppable. One by one, the enemy forces were neutralized. When the last soldier fell, the facility's main console hummed to life, revealing the ancient weapon system hidden within. "This is it," Lyra said. "The key to turning the tide. But it requires careful handling. One mistake could destroy everything." Elias studied the controls. "Then we do it carefully together." Working side by side, they activated the weapon system. Energy pulsed through the facility, reaching out to disrupt the warlord's army across the plains. Communication lines were scrambled, vehicles immobilized, and drones disabled. The tide was turning. Lyra looked at Elias, her eyes shining. "We did it. Together we made a difference. This is what humans can do. They fight with heart, courage, and intelligence, even against impossible odds." Elias smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief washing over him. "And we're just getting started. The warlord won't stop, but neither will we." As they watched the impact of their actions ripple across the barren war zone, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Human courage, resourcefulness, and determination had carried them this far, and would carry them even further. The betrayal and danger they faced had only strengthened their resolve. Together, human and alien, they were capable of achieving the impossible. And somewhere in the distance, the warlord's forces regrouped, unaware that their plans were unraveling. But Elias and Lyra were ready. The final battles loomed, and they would face them with the unbreakable alliance they had forged through trust, courage, and shared determination. In the barren war zone, a new hope had been born, a hope built on the heart of humanity and the wisdom of allies. The barren plains lay quiet under the twin suns, but the air hummed with tension. Elias and Lyra stood atop a rocky ridge, overlooking the warlord's stronghold in the distance. Smoke rose from scattered fires, and the faint clatter of machinery echoed across the wasteland. This was it, the final confrontation. Elias checked his equipment one last time. His armor bore scratches from past battles, and his weapons had seen heavy use, but he was ready. Beside him, Lyra's eyes glimmered with determination. "This is the moment," she said softly. "The warlord cannot win if we act together." Elias nodded. "Then let's finish this, for your people, and for everyone who suffered because of him." They descended carefully into the valleys, using the terrain to stay hidden. The warlord's scouts were few now. Many had been neutralized by the weapon system they had activated. But the remaining forces were stronger, desperate, and unpredictable. As they approached the stronghold, Elias signaled a halt. "We need a plan. Rushing in will get us killed." Lyra studied the fortress. "There is a main gate heavily guarded and a secondary access tunnel used for maintenance. We can split their forces by using the tunnel. You take the lead on the gate. I'll handle the tunnel." Elias grinned faintly. Human strategy and alien knowledge. "I like it." The plan unfolded with precision. Elias and a small group of freed allies approached the main gate, drawing the attention of the warlord's forces. The soldiers advanced confidently, underestimating the humans. But Elias was ready. Using a combination of traps, explosives, and clever diversions, he neutralized the frontline defenses. Meanwhile, Lyra navigated the maintenance tunnel with agility and stealth. She activated the facility's inner defenses remotely, causing confusion and chaos within the stronghold. Drones faltered, turrets misfired, and the enemy soldiers were forced to retreat from their positions. Elias fought with unmatched courage. Every move was calculated, every decision precise. He ducked under laser fire, rolled past obstacles, and struck when necessary. Around him, his allies followed his lead, showing the indomitable spirit of humanity. Even when outnumbered, they fought with intelligence and heart. Lyra emerged from the tunnel, linking up with Elias inside the stronghold. Together they pressed forward, disabling critical systems and cutting off enemy reinforcements. The warlord's forces, disoriented and panicked, struggled to maintain control. Finally, they reached the central chamber where the warlord waited. A tall, imposing figure, his armor reflecting the flickering lights of the ruined stronghold. His eyes narrowed as he saw them. "So the humans and the princess dare to challenge me?" he growled. Elias stepped forward. "This ends today. Your reign of terror is over." The warlord laughed, a deep, menacing sound. "You think you can defeat me alone?" Lyra activated a defensive shield around them, the alien technology humming with power. "We are not alone," she said. "We fight together." The battle that followed was fierce. The warlord's strength was formidable, but human ingenuity and courage proved unstoppable. Elias used the environment to his advantage, luring the warlord into traps and creating openings for Lyra to strike with precision energy bursts. Every attack, every maneuver, showcased the combination of human adaptability and alien knowledge. The warlord roared in frustration as his defenses failed. He lunged at Elias, but Lyra intervened, striking at his weapon systems to disable them. Elias seized the moment, confronting the warlord directly. With a final strategic move, he overpowered the warlord, forcing him to retreat into a containment chamber designed by Lyra's alien technology. The stronghold fell silent. Smoke rose from broken machinery, and the surviving forces surrendered. Elias and Lyra stood together, exhausted but victorious. Around them, the freed allies celebrated. Humanity had triumphed, not through sheer strength alone, but through courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination. Lyra turned to Elias, her eyes shining. "We did it. Your people, humans. You have earned respect across the stars today. Not just for bravery, but for heart and wisdom." Elias smiled faintly. "We only did what we had to do, but I'll admit it feels good to know we made a difference." Together they looked out over the barren war zone. Fires still burned in places, but the tide of destruction had ended. Slowly life would return and the planet could begin to heal. Lyra's people had a chance to rebuild, and humans had shown that courage, adaptability, and ingenuity could tip the scales, even against overwhelming odds. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias reflected on the journey. He had faced impossible challenges, navigated treacherous terrain, and fought battles that seemed unwinnable. Yet through it all he had survived, not just because of skill or luck, but because of human courage and the bonds forged along the way. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "Together we can ensure that peace lasts, and that hope spreads across the galaxy." Elias nodded. "Then we move forward, not as mercenary and princess, but as allies. Together, we face whatever comes next." The story of survival, courage, and alliance had reached a triumphant conclusion, but the journey of Elias and Lyra was far from over. In the heart of the barren war zone, they had proven something extraordinary, that humans with determination and ingenuity could stand against any force, overcome impossible odds, and inspire hope where there was none. And as the stars began to twinkle above, Elias realized that this was the true power of humanity, not just to survive, but to protect, to inspire, and to fight for what was right. The warlord had been defeated, but the legacy of courage, unity, and human heart would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Together, Elias and Lyra stepped forward into the future, ready to face whatever challenges awaited, bound by trust, respect, and the unshakable belief that humanity, when it dared, could change the universe.